because any cat, even in the wild, if they don't have to move, they don't move, they sleep.
The scientific community has labeled these tigers as generic. They look like tigers, but are they really? Tigers in the wild are generally solitary and secretive, coming together during the mating season and perhaps to share a kill. In captivity, they become very sociable with both humans and other tigers. They haven't been taught how to hunt and could starve if left on their own. Has the very essence of tigerness been bred out of them?
What we do know about subspecies, legitimate subspecies, is that we know what their genetic makeup is according to molecular biology. Okay, it can be defined. And that is why the private ownership tigers, they will never contribute to the conservation of wild tigers, simply because, not because they're not a tiger, because in a sense they are a Panthera tigris. That's the Latin name for what a tiger is. But they've lost their tigerness. They've lost their tigerness, and what we mean by that is they have been inbred and crossbred to the point where no one knows what their lineages are, and everyone knows the more inbreed you have, the greater risks or susceptibility to diseases. You become less fit, and when you become less fit, your ability to survive in the wild becomes negligible. The American tiger is really a junk tiger. It is nothing more than an illusion of a tiger.
In 2005, Ron Tilson and Tammy Tees worked together to stop the breeding of tigers in Minnesota. They're concerned about the conditions in which private tigers are kept.
So Sabrina is supposed to be a Sumatran Bengal mix, and she's our worst abuse case we've seen. She charged the fence nonstop.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But she does have, from this up around the face and that, sort of this Sumatran look to her with the really black stripe.
And she's got a lot longer.
They'd welcome a federal ban on breeding and ownership if it were to pass tomorrow.
I wouldn't want to see these animals abused. You can't do that. That I would lose sleep over. But I would certainly like to see them all neutered, and I would like to see them well taken care of until they die. Would that bother me? No, that would put me to sleep really well. We'll just simply lose a large number of worthless tigers that consume resources that should be spent on wild tigers, and that actually corrupt the message that we're doing something wonderful for tigers, when in fact we're not doing anything for tigers. Why are we spending all of this time and energy and money in trying to protect the right to own this, or even allowing it to happen, and putting people at risk? And I keep coming back to these same issues. I don't get it. I don't get why it isn't stopped.
Conservationists have been reluctant to study or give any attention to American tigers. However, with the crisis in the wild, some of the scientific community are taking a closer look at these generic tigers. Stephen O'Brien is former chief of the Laboratory of Genomic Diversity at the National Cancer Institute. He's an authority on big cat genetics and evolutionary biology. But his work has sparked controversy in the conservation world.
Is there a value in the admixture in tigers? That is, tigers that have an ancestry that includes interbreeding between different subspecies. Of course there's a value in it. It's still a tiger. Most of the tigers in captivity are considered by my friends and colleagues to be junk because they're hybrids between different subspecies. And many of them are, but I wasn't sure how many.
Stephen O'Brien's team has recently designed a method to determine the genetic makeup of big cats.
So we used this DNA fingerprint technology that was developed to identify the difference between subspecies of tigers. And I said, if you take one of these tigers that we don't know, is it really a hybrid? Well, what we found was that many of them are indeed pure subspecies. They were either Bengal, or they were Amur, or they were Sumatran, or one of the living subspecies. I think the captive population should not be discounted.
Good. Nice.
The reassessment of these generic tigers has led to another exciting discovery. Not only are some of them purebred subspecies, they also have a rich genetic diversity, as rich as in the wild population. Since their ancestors were taken from the wild when tigers were thriving, some captive tigers have retained many characteristics, perhaps now lost in wild tigers. Tiger conservationists have been quick to point out that the sample studied by Stephen O'Brien did not include a significant number of backyard-bred tigers. Still, he believes that each tiger counts.
My personal feeling about it is we're backing up a tiger population in the wild that is not doing very well. And to tell you the truth, I'd rather have the animal alive in a few hundred years than simply lose it by exterminating all the captive animals, which is, one solution. Maybe that's not a reasonable thing. I realize not everybody agrees with that, but I really think that, when evolution creates a species as magnificent as the tiger, it only does it once, and if you lose it, it's not going to come back.
It seems that some captive tigers could play a role in the survival of the species. But what about privately owned American tigers? Will they be around long enough to be part of the solution? The wild tiger population was almost 10,000 in 1990. 20 years later, there are only about 3,000 animals left, and they are vanishing faster than ever.
When I first moved into this office 25 years ago, I had this big concrete wall and I wondered what I wanted to put on it. And it came to me, why don't I have the covers of magazines that are focusing on tiger issues? It starts back here, The New Scientist. Does the tiger have a future? That's what we're talking about right now. Too Late for Tigers in Wildlife Conservation magazine. Doomed, cover of Time magazine. The Last Tigers. Initially, I thought they were very interesting because it gave me a focus. But what happened was that this message just became such a common message. It's a little bit like the sky is falling down, the sky is falling down, and after a while, no one hears you calling.
World leaders seem to be finally waking up to the dire future facing wild tigers. In November 2010, an international summit was held in St. Petersburg. The goal was to develop a strategy to save the wild tiger from extinction. Heads of state from the 13 tiger range countries set a target to double the population by 2022 and committed over 230 million euros. But is that enough? The threats facing the Asian big cat are many and serious. In August 2011, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service announced that it wanted to reinstate a permitting process to control the breeding of generic tigers. This would severely reduce the number of tigers bred in captivity. But for the proponents of a total ban on private ownership, things aren't moving fast enough on Capitol Hill. Along with private owners, the entertainment industry is lobbying to slow down the legislative process.
I am very annoyed that this bill is in the status that it is. It's just up in the air right now because we can't, I am not going to buckle and say it's okay to breed these animals. It's a huge problem.
Come in age? Yeah, she's a little fat. She's getting old. You gotta maybe try the 5.
But tigers have created jobs and income. They appear in movies. They are still popular in circuses. And there's even an industry that's created a special diet for them. In these days of economic turmoil, a ban that would cost American jobs isn't easy for a politician to support.
To be honest, I really don't know what the federal ban will do, because like so many of the federal regulations and the state laws, there's going to be exemptions carved out of a federal ban on breeding tigers and other big cats. So the circus industry could be exempt, entertainment could be exempt. It'll be a very long process because there's a lot of money involved.
From the professional's standpoint, it's a sensitive issue because they're being regulated out of the business. And, well, from the owner's standpoint, it's a sensitive issue because they're attached to the animal. And they're emotional about it.
Only recently, American tigers have come under scientific and legal scrutiny, and their fate raises many questions. But if the wild population is to double, animals bred in captivity will be required for the complex process of reintroduction. Even though conservationists have every reason to be pessimistic about the future of the tiger, there is still some hope.
We're on the cusp of a new revolution in tiger conservation, and that is looking at reintroduction of captive individuals back into spaces where they once lived. The big issue is, can captive tigers actually go out and live and survive on their own in the wilderness areas? The honest answer to that is, don't know. There's some who say no, they have to be taught how to do this, and they learn from their mothers, and the mother can't teach them if there aren't natural prey. But in fact, all of these are little roadblocks. All of these can be taken care of and surmounted.
Captive bred lions and cheetahs have been introduced into the wild in South Africa. This has encouraged Chinese officials. Today, South China tigers are being prepared in Africa for their reintroduction in China. Each generation will be released into a larger and wilder setting. They will learn how to hunt, teach their skills to their offspring, while having less and less contact with humans. But preparing tigers for their release is only half of the challenge. Experts know that wild tigers need space, and 250-kilo predators also need prey. Preserving the ecosystems of tiger range countries is as crucial as preserving the tigers themselves. That's why there are so few of these rewilding efforts.
We need some new ideas if we're going to really realize the prediction of the St. Petersburg summit to double tigers in the wild. And one of the possibilities is to be exploring places where we can restore tigers.
Central Asia, the former range of the extinct Caspian tiger, is a vast region with a sparse population. Countries like Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan did not participate in the St. Petersburg summit, but they are prime candidates for bold conservation initiatives.
It's a habitat area which is very low in human density, which is important for reintroduction of tigers, which has the potential of being homes for tigers from different parts of the world. There are conservationists in these areas that I think, in fact I know, would be very interested in hosting tiger reconstitution or reintroduction in those regions.
For these programs to work, more tigers will be needed. The fate of thousands of privately owned tigers is being debated by scientists, lawyers, and politicians. So far, no one has asked for any of these tigers to be shipped overseas.
Princess, look at mommy. Princess! There she does.
Will the American tiger have the chance to play a role in the future of the species? That has yet to be determined. But perhaps one day, an American-born tiger will be set free to join its wild cousins.